Thank you so much. Indeed, my name is Hedwig. I never realized that it is a Polish name, Jadwiga. So I'm very honored to be here. It's my first time here in Lublin. And thanks to the organization, we have already visited many of you. We were 2 days visiting the cultural institutions here in Lublin in order to find out if there might be a possibility to get to know each other, but of course first also to think about if in future Manifesta, which is the only traveling nomadic biennial, could come to Lublin or to this region. What I was asked to do today is to give you a kind of introduction story about what Manifesta is, how this European biennial works and how it functions, and give a kind of a brief story through its history. Because last week, I'm directly coming from Spain, last week the 8th edition of Manifesta was closing in Murcia, Cartagena, and we started the 9th edition of Manifesta in Limburg, Belgium. But first let me go to where everything started with Manifesta 20 years ago. Manifesta is the only European biennial of contemporary art, and it is a little bit a different story than any other biennial because Manifesta's origin deals with the fall of the Berlin Wall. It's hard to imagine for many of my colleagues that before the Berlin Wall fell, curators and artists were hardly able to travel from, for example, Berlin to the other side of the Iron Curtain, from Vienna to Bratislava. And when the Berlin Wall fell, 8 European countries came together and said, since now half of our country, or half of our continent is uniting, we should investigate if there could be a platform developed which is specially focused on this pan-European idea. Because until now, until that moment in 1989, Documenta was not very much focusing on East or Central European developments. Sao Paulo, Venice Biennale, there were many biennials at that moment, but none of them were able to investigate artistic practices in the whole of Europe. When these 8 countries came together, after 1989, the fall of the Berlin Wall, they were thinking it needs to be radically different. So let's take a biennial, the biennial model of changing locations every 2 years. This is a regular thing, like Venice Biennale. What was not so regular is to focus on young and emerging artists who did not have an institutional backing and an institutional voice. So instead of focusing on artists who already had achieved a career, Manifesta was able to focus on those artists who had to start their careers. What also these 8 initiators said, what is more important in a united Europe? It's not only making an exhibition. Everybody can make a biennial exhibition. Let's think about how we start up creating a network in which people are able to work together on a long-term development, in which people are able to connect to each other, not only for one exhibition, but also after this exhibition. So you will see in the examples which I will use afterwards that the network of Manifesta was always as equally as important as the biennial exhibitions. What was also very, very important, and this was in the beginning, it had a lot of criticism, especially from Britain, especially from France, that Manifesta shouldn't have a national representation. As you know, in Venice Biennale, all the pavilions are having a national representation, meaning the best national artist is sent to the Biennale to showcase his works. In Manifesta we said it would be much more interesting not to have a national representation, but to have a young curator from outside judging what is interesting at the status of artistic presence. So actually we asked all the countries to deliver the artistic choice of curating the shows to independent curators. Now this sounds all quite logic, but at that time it was not so logic. Also in the beginning we had this idealistic idea with Manifesta that we would collaborate all together in terms of finances. All the European countries would pay together for the Manifesta European Biennial. And I remember in one of the first days in the 90s, it took us 5 years to start the biennial, but in the 90s we were very much worrying if we wanted really to create a pan-European platform, how would we do this? Because with whom would we collaborate in the East European countries? And it was in one of those days that I met George Soros, and I have to say that in some respect, the fact that George Soros was backing us in the beginning of the biennial took the possibility that all European, East European and Central European countries could participate with the Soros Centers. Maybe you remember these institutions in the beginning of the 90s, which created also an equal participation. So not that the West was paying for the East, but an equal participation. And of course, what was very important in the beginning, that through the centers, the Soros Centers, we were able to investigate the artistic productions, where the artist lived, how the artist functions. Because until the end of the 80s, it was quite difficult also for Western curators to find themselves, to archive, to have a very good research in the East. So here, I see you're also reading it in English. I thought I might have translated it in Polish. Here you see the official aims of Manifesta. So in the first, again, to provide Europe with an international platform for contemporary artists who have not yet received their voice or institutional backing. To facilitate exchanges. In many of the manifestas, it is about how can we provide information from very different sources, not only from the artistic world, but also in an interdisciplinary way, especially for those who have limited access to market or established institutions. And one of the most important aims of Manifesta is to respond to commonly perceived need by initiating new projects. And I will give you later some examples what we mean with new projects, or developing new audiences. Manifesta has this wish not only to communicate with, for example, the art world, but also to those audiences who are not yet educated in contemporary art or not have a tradition even in contemporary art. Also, Manifesta is working a lot with experimenting curatorial models, and I will come back to this later. So I spoke about a network program. A lot of people say we set up a network program, but here maybe there is this illustration of how does the network program of Manifesta work. So we have the biennials every 2 years, changing places from one location to another. Besides, we do the Manifesta Journal, and the Manifesta Journal was initiated by Victor Misiano from Russia and Igor Sabel, who unfortunately already died, in Ljubljana. And it was in the 90s the first theoretical research tool for curatorial research.